Hey, deserving listeners, Darcey and Stacey. Let's watch.
Of course I love you. Why think I'm gonna do the things I do?
Feels like the love has gone and never really feels like you talk to me like you're my fiance. It just feels like you talk to me like someone you hate, actually, and I'm not quite sure why you do that.
So I'll tell you how I personally feel. This isn't me as a therapist. This is as a civilian. It looks like they're getting back together, and because she's opening up. And do you love? I mean, now she's having conversation, and she's having a tone. She's still being accusatory, which isn't great. I mean, she should say something like, "I don't know if it's you or me, but sometimes I feel like you hate me, because I don't know about y'all." And of course, we're not there all the time, but we have seen no evidence that he hates her. Everything has been to the contrary of that. But she feels as though he hates her, which is fine. You can feel that way and be like, am I reading you wrong? What's going on here? That happens. It's universal in relationships, by the way. But this lack of acknowledgement that maybe I'm distorted, maybe I'm reading things wrong, just complete lack of that possibility. Anyway, so I'll tell you, as a civilian, on one hand, before this scene, I was like, oh no, they're going to break up. How terrible for the two of them. But now that it looks like they're getting back together, I'm like, oh no, how terrible for the two of them.
The Jesse thing is a totally different situation, so that's on you to live with.
You're right, it's a totally different situation because I'm not trying to be friends with Jesse.
Don't get it twisted. Don't know her as a friend. I only know her as a woman that was married to you.
So now they're having a conversation, which is, I think, important given the circumstances, to clarify what happened. And best case scenario, Darcey is like, look, it's a different situation because with Jesse, I consider him to be like an abusive ex to me. And so for you to contact him, I don't want him to be anywhere near my life. It actually kind of freaks me out to know that he's in contact with you. It's very threatening to me. It makes me feel very bad. So it is a different situation because with Octavia, I'm pretty sure you don't have that kind of relationship with Octavia. So it is different. However, I now understand how horrible it was that I contacted Octavia, one, and two, continued to reach out to her even though you didn't want me to. So we can acknowledge, Darcey can say, hey, this is different. And she can say, I'm sorry for reaching out to Octavia. I never should have done that. So let's see if she does that.
The reason I do it, I wanted to actually figure out how you feel and why did you contact my ex. I was hurt.
If you want to get angry about that and make it more than what it is.
That's not right.
So let's analyze this conversation. So he is saying, I was reaching out to him because I was hurt. It's not a good idea, but he had tried many other ways of trying to communicate. You reaching out to Octavia hurts me. You reaching out to Octavia hurts me. You believing friend of a friend of a friend about a thing I said that I never said hurts me. You yelling at me. You never apologizing. You saying that I'm gaslighting you. You saying that I never love you. You accusing me of things. Those things were hurting me. Okay. So, and then, but anyway, he's just saying this one thing. It hurt me that you reached out to Octavia. That's why I reached out to Jesse. And the way that Darcey reacts, she's like, don't flip this around. So either we believe that Darcey knows that there's something, so assuming that there's something weird about the way Darcey sees the world, which I don't know if y'all agree with that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it seems like Darcey is very rigid, distorts things, at least from my perspective, based on what we see on the show, which I can never know if it reflects reality. But based on the assumption that there's some distortion there, is it a purposeful distortion? Is Darcey like, ha ha ha, I know I'm wrong, but I'm not going to admit it? Or is there some defense that is clouding her to the idea that maybe there's something wrong with what she did? And I think it's the second one. So as Georgie starts to defend himself, I think it feels wrong to her. And then that's why she tries to find words to describe how it feels. And it feels like, oh, you're trying to flip this around on me. You're not being fair. You're saying I did something wrong and I never did anything wrong. You're gaslighting me, all this kind of stuff. So I'm worried that it's going to go down the road. Given what I said, I guess as a civilian just watching the show, I'm worried about them being together and I'm worried about them breaking up. It's just hard to watch regardless of what happens here.
You never trying to understand the things you do, how it's affecting me. It's always about you.
I'm not here to hurt you, darling. I really am not here to hurt you.
What you do?
Okay, so if I were there, I'd say, Darcey, regardless of how you think about it, what is Georgie saying? And hopefully she could say, well, he's saying that I hurt him. Okay, so what do you think about that? And Darcey, I don't think I hurt him. Okay, that's fine. But how about you find out from Georgie how you hurt him? Now, you can disagree with it. That's okay. But if you're going to be in a relationship, or if you want to improve the relationship, you have to find out. You have to listen to that. And even if in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind, you're thinking, I don't agree with any, I think that person is distorted. I think that person has it all wrong. But the beginning of a conversation is, okay, let me understand this. Because sometimes if you just stop and listen, you might be like, oh, well, I can see that. Let's see if Darcey does that.
Understand the things you say here, that's how it affect me and how it hurt me. Do you understand that?
Do you don't think the things that you said affects people? Well, I'm
asking you a simple question.
Yeah, this is a classic, almost universal thing that couples will do, is when they're being accused of something or when someone is expressing hurt, is to say, you do that to me too. And instead of stopping and doing one thing at a time, it's fine that you're like, wait a second, you're accusing me of X, Y, and Z. You did X, Y, and Z to me last week. It's fine to make that connection. It makes sense, but one step at a time. And a big part of couples therapy is me taking one step at a time. Sometimes just for the whole session. But anyway, one step at a time of like, okay, let's talk about Georgie's hurts. Let's convey understanding. Let's validate. Now let's flip it. Darcey, you can talk about your hurts. Georgie, take care. Let's understand each other. But instead, everyone's like, well, you did this to me. Well, you did the same thing to me last week. Well, that's not what we're talking about. Well, what are we talking about? And that's what they're doing.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to say my piece right now because I think I deserve much better than what I'm getting. I don't want a relationship like this. I deserve more. I don't feel like you treat me like how a fiance should. And you have plenty of time in the apartment before I get back to figure.
Yeah. I mean, given what we've seen up until this point, this makes total logical sense based on what we've seen. And the way that Darcey is saying it, it kind of seems like she was already done with the relationship anyway. She's just like, matter of fact, I think we're done. So now, I guess I'm worried about them getting back together because how are they going to trust each other if they get back together after this, particularly Georgie trusting her? And yeah, it's one thing to watch Darcey with Jesse and be like, whoa. And then Tom, there were definitely things about Tom I thought like, I don't know if this is going to work. But with Georgie, and last season, there wasn't any of this stuff. And this season, it just seems like that's all it is. It's like last season was Florian, and this season it's all Georgie. And I don't know. If this is what's happening, if what we're seeing is what's actually happening, this is a total tragedy. This has been Darcey's whole mission in life since I started watching her. When she first was on the first season with Jesse, she wants to find a love of her life. She feels she deserves to be in a relationship that's good, and she does. And it's like she almost had it, right? Yeah, it's one thing to watch a fictional show and watch people, Darth Vader falls, but it gets you. It's another thing to watch. These are real people. This is their life.
Figure things out, but I can't do this anymore.
But you don't need to be weak and walk away when you have problems.
I'm not a weak woman. I'm a very strong woman because I'm standing in my power now, and you can't take that away.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to attack each other at this point. He's calling her weak. That's obviously not true and not the right thing to say in this situation if you're trying to win her back. If I was Georgie's friend, I'd just be like, how about you just cut your losses and move on, find someone else? Because even if say they work it out, which I don't know, given the show, I've seen things like that happen. Do we believe that these conflicts are over? No, there's no possible, based on, if what we've seen is a reflective of reality, this is just the beginning of the conflicts between the two of them.
I'm okay with it. I'm happy. I have peace about it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I don't want to be treated like that.
Denise talk to you that way?
You can't do that to me anymore.
Do what to you? Tell you that you hurt his feelings? Tell you that when you talk to my ex-girlfriend, it hurts my feelings? Tell you that when you believe a friend of a friend of a friend that I said that I was only with you for the money, that you believe them and not believe me? That I told you that you shouldn't be like assuming because I have some money in a sock in a drawer that somehow I'm like, I'm going to leave you or I'm in it for the money, or like treating me. You don't want to put up with that anymore. When I tell you that hurts my feelings, when you're yelling at me and I like listen, and when we have a fight, I'm the one who comes to you and says, hey, can we work it out? So I just have to assume that we're not seeing it, that given their reaction, the show edited out every bad thing that Georgie ever did. And because that's the only way to make this make sense to me.
Of course I'm okay. I'm not gonna complain and cry like a baby. What am I doing? Of course I'm disappointed, but that's life. That's why I don't open, because I've been up many times.
Well, that's got to break your heart. That for him, he's saying that's why I never open up, because so in 5 years, are we going to see a similar syndrome in Georgie that we see in Darcey? And that can happen sometimes, where trauma just kind of moves itself around within relationships. And Darcey got it from someone else, who got it from someone else, who got it from someone else. And now, will Georgie have trust issues? Will Georgie start seeing threats that don't actually exist? Are we going to have spin-off with Georgie? But anyway, it breaks my heart that he's like, I opened up, and this is why I don't know, because that was the contention, right, from Octavia, I believe, was that he doesn't open up. And Darcey's like, how come you don't open up? And this is this kind of proves that syndrome, or that way of reacting to attachment threat, is a patterned reaction of closing himself off. And he extended himself because he was trying to make it work, and it didn't work. And so now even more reason to cut himself off from people emotionally.
Right now, again, make stronger. It's not easy to be in a relationship. She thinks she's gonna find someone and gonna be in love and happy. In every relationship she's gonna go through the same things over and over.
Yeah, I don't know that to be true, but that's a viable hypothesis, and that's been one of the tragedies that we've seen. And again, if it's true, everything that's happening on the show, it's a very, very stark example of how one's relational traumas can be recreated, whether it applies or not, meaning that you have a relationship that's been internalized of being mistreated, being manipulated, being gaslit, being hurt, and it was in your past, and then you are bound to repeat it and will see it when it doesn't exist. And to have, regardless of who you're involved with, you're going to repeat that over and over and over again. You're either going to find someone to agree with it, you're going to socialize the other, or you're going to socialize the other person to agree with it. And yeah, over and over and over again. I mean, if this relationship is over, can we imagine what Darcey's next, what possible world, maybe I just can't, I was thinking maybe if someone didn't live with her, and because she seems to flourish with Tom when they were not living together, and Tom was taking her on nice boat rides and taking her to nice restaurants. But of course, it's not real relationship, or at least not long-term relationship.
The things she do, she hurt me. I mean, yeah, it's being toxic, yeah, but you make it worse by contacting my ex, by having insecurities, by having trust issues. Maybe if you don't put too much pressure on me and you have so much insecurity issues and concerns about me, I'll show you more love.
Yeah, from what I've seen, Georgie is describing it very accurately. That because of your trust issues, which he would accommodate, by the way, when she was expressing and operating from her trust issues, he would recognize it pretty quickly, and he would be the bigger person and reach out to her and say, hey, it was only towards the mid to late part of the season when he started to like get upset and say, you're doing this again, you're blaming me. And then she would say he's gaslighting her. And then he says, and your trust issues is like you're pressuring me, you're accusing me, you're pushing me away. If you're looking for love, if you didn't engage in your trust issues, if you didn't engage in these attacks, then you would have experienced more love from me. Yeah. It's interesting that he's encapsulating it pretty well, even though he just got dumped and he's upset. I mean, I don't think we've seen him this upset before. And the fact that he can, because other people in this situation, and we've seen on the show before, will say some really horrible things, kind of understandably, right? They will say, swear words and be unreasonable, but he's actually just laying it out pretty accurately, at least what we've seen on the show.
But by doing this stuff, you're pushing me away. I don't know what kind of game she's playing. By acting this way, and I'll give up and I don't want to be together anymore, she's weak.
Okay, calling her names, that's not okay. I wonder if this is some kind of translation issue, but if he is using the word as I'm receiving it, I don't think it's fair to say she's weak. It's just that she is traumatized from the past, maybe even just by Jesse alone, and is seeing things that aren't there. This happens, right? When you go to war and you've been traumatized and you have PTSD or some other trauma syndrome, and you come back to home and you hear a loud noise and you think it's a gunshot when it's just a firecracker or something. That's how trauma works. It makes us hypervigilant and makes us, when you're at war and you hear a loud noise and it's associated with death and blood and terribleness and fear, then you learn to associate the things. When you hear a loud noise, because it's not the loud noise that's the problem, it's what happens as a result of the loud noise. And they become connected, and that's what trauma does for us. And it seems to be an adaptive thing of when a saber-toothed tiger comes out of the woods, we hear rustling in the leaves, we might hear, padding of feet, and we turn around and we see the saber-toothed tiger, it comes out and it, eats our friend and we run off. And so we wrap that whole experience into the trauma such that if we hear a little rustling in the bushes, we immediately have a massive amount of distress because we have that association between rustling in the leaves and death and destruction and losing my best friend. Even though it could just be your mom rustling in the bushes. So, but our brains don't have time to categorize things. It's very important that we learn from danger. And so when you're at war and you hear loud noises and you see death and destruction, or you imagine it happening, everything becomes encoded. And so you hear a loud noise, and depending on how traumatized you were and the sort of trauma condition you have, you might actually, in a certain way, hallucinate that it is a gunshot. And people say, oh, it's just a firework. You're like, no, there's a threat, because it feels that way to you. If you have been abandoned and treated poorly in a relationship, and someone is disagreeing with you, or someone is saying, you're not being a good partner to me, and those things happened to you before when it didn't really apply and the person was abandoning you. So let me just, let's just talk about Jesse, because we know that happened. I highly suspect that Darcey's relational traumas go way back before Jesse, but let's just use Jesse. So Jesse and Darcey, there were moments where Jesse was totally convinced that Darcey was to blame. We remember that, right? That Jesse or Darcey, there's something wrong with you. He was like, you're always to blame. I'm never to blame. Jesse was kind of big on that. There's something deeply wrong with you. You're an alcoholic. You're emotional. You threw the shoe at me. All that kind of stuff. You're micromanaging, cutting on the bias. And to my knowledge, Jesse never admitted that he did anything wrong. Okay, so all the associations are there. You have a man. Let me just rattle off all the similarities that could be a trigger to Darcey. You have a man from Europe. You have a man that you're involved with, younger man. You have you're being accused of that everything's your fault. You are hurt. You feel distant, and you feel mistreated, and it all gets wrapped up in this trauma of being terrified, of feeling worthless, of feeling threatened, humiliated, abandoned. And so you sort of lump all that into one unit. So then someone comes along and is nothing like that in the past, in the similar way that a firecracker is nothing like a gun, and your mom rustling in the bushes is nothing like a saber-toothed tiger. But you have someone saying, you're hurting me. There's something, you're doing bad things to me. Hypervigilance, trigger, no way, this, massive distress. It's happening all over again. I'm right back there with Jesse. This is happening all over again. I need to assert myself. I don't feel love for this person. I need to get rid of them. There's a strong possibility that's happening. Like I said, we can just go off Jesse and have a good hypothesis around that, but I'm pretty sure Darcey came into the relationship with Jesse with a lot of those kinds of traumas prior.
She's spinning it. I just couldn't listen to it anymore.
He never takes responsibility for his actions.
I don't even want to think about it because he says the same thing over. I don't have to anymore.
You don't even have to think about it anymore. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. You're free. That's in the past.
She did it. She finally did it.
And then a running hypothesis I've had about Stacey's involvement is that she's been traumatized by Darcey's relationships, that there's been many times where she has been hurt through Darcey by seeing her sister suffer. And Stacey has a big bone to pick with all the past partners that Darcey says, and with Darcey herself, of like, why do you stay in these relationships? And so for Stacey, she is seeing something also that doesn't exist in the current moment, but definitely did in the past. And she's working out her conflict with past Darcey and past partners through Georgie and Darcey, and seeing a situation that doesn't exist. And, this time she's going to get Darcey to leave him, because she should have left all those other guys earlier. And I'm going to do it. This time I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to support her. I'm going to be a good twin, and I'm going to be there for her. And yay, I got her to leave someone, without stopping to think, does it actually apply this time?
Darcey's showing so much strength right now to break off an engagement. That's not easy to do. And for her to do that shows how much she loves herself.
Think about
The moment's
your
gone.
future. Think about
That's what I want.
climbing up to that mountain.
Yeah.
I feel like running up and out.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.